Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. I am so happy that you decided to join us again today. If this is your first time, I want to let you know how excited I am that you're here. I hope that our casual environment will help you feel comfortable and free to chat, comment, and get to know others in our community. I'd love to get to know you a little bit more, and so please let me know how I can better serve you and our magical community. So, welcome, everyone. Welcome. Let's start by inviting the Great Mother to bless our time together. O Great Mother, Lady of the Night and the Silvery Moon, she whom is the darkness and the light that shines through it. Hail to thee, great Lady of the Moon. Hear us, your children, as we ask of your divine presence here within our sacred circle of light, where we have come to partake of the great beauty, strength, and wisdom that lies within each and every one of us. Blessed be. So today, we're going to be talking about the illusion of life and death, and I have a special guest that's going to be joining us in just a moment. And with that being said, let me do a disclaimer that we're going to be talking about transcending the fear of death and whatnot. And the next passage from the Book of One, my book, the Book of One, that I'm going to be reading, might come off a little harsh, and that's not what this is about. It's about transcending the fear of death to understand that we are infinite beings. As well, our spell intention at the end of today's broadcast is also going to be along those lines. So let's start by reading passage 25 from the Book of One, called Infinite Existence. Mourn not the death of a loved one, for death is a release for the soul from its mundane physical existence. Mourn not the loss of love, for that is selfishness and desiring that soul as part of your mundane physical existence. Release and let go. Surrender yourself to yourself. For you are all there is. You are one with one, the source. Therefore, there is no loss ever. And now we're going to do our short minute meditation. We can contemplate the topic, we can contemplate the passage that I just read. So, why don't you join me in closing your eyes and taking a deep breath and just sit in quiet, sit in silence, and allow ourselves to breathe. Taking a deep breath in through your nose, filling your belly, and Breathing in, I am calm. Breathing out, I am in peace. Blessed be. So I've got a wonderful special guest who is kind enough to join us today. Clare Goldsberry has experienced Protestant Christianity, Mormonism, the ageless wisdom teachings, Gnosticism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. She writes about religion and spiritual traditions for Quest magazine and other publications. In her new book, The Illusion of Life and Death, Mind, Consciousness, and Eternal Being, Clare shares the wisdom and knowledge of the ancient sages, spiritual teachers like the Buddha, philosophers like Plato and Seneca, and modern day quantum physicists. And she walks us through the mystery of death and dying, exploring the meaning and the purpose of life. And I am lucky enough to be here with Clare Goldsberry herself, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the topics that are in her new book, The Illusion of Life and Death, Mind, Consciousness, and Eternal Being. So welcome, Clare, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Bernard. It's nice to be here.
We're very happy to have you and honored someone with your wisdom on this particular matter, and these topics are here to share with us a little bit about what is the illusion of life and death. What is that, Clare?
Well, the illusion of life and death is a topic that is talked about a lot in the Eastern philosophies, Hinduism and Buddhism. And what is this experience that we call material? Hindu and Buddhist philosophies talk about the illusion, but the quantum physicists do as well, which is why I included that in my book. Buddhism, we have a saying that everything is created in the mind by the mind, and nothing has any inherent reality from its own side. And so by illusion, we don't mean that it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. Illusion is sort of like when you think of a magician, and a magician doesn't do anything that is different than what reality can produce, but how we perceive what the magician is doing. It's an illusion. It's often called an illusionist because we think they're doing one thing when they're really doing something else. And so illusion is reality in a different form. It's not what we think it is.
And that's a great explanation. And to clarify for my viewers, I know a lot of you are magical practitioners. She's referring to performance magicians.
That's right. Yes. Sorry about that.
So you talk about also overcoming the fear of death and why it's important to living and to having a good death. So what is a good death and why is it important to overcome fear?
Well, I think of a good death as one that is free from fear and free from regrets, free from attachments to the body, attachments to the things of this world. Often that's what creates the fear of death is our attachment, because we want everything to be real and permanent and immutable, and we don't accept change very well. And I think having a good death is accepting the idea that nothing is permanent. All is impermanent, and to be able to embrace that impermanence. And when you talk about overcoming fear of death, it's difficult because that's, I think, one thing that all human beings have in common. I think all sentient beings have that in common. Nothing wants to die. And having to overcome a fear of death, I think, is being able to embrace the idea of this impermanence and non-attachment. Why get attached to things that aren't going to last? Being able to let go, well, there's nothing to let go of, because we only perceive things out there as being out there, separate from our minds. And they're really not. They're within our mind. We create the world and the experiences that we have, and nothing exists inherently outside of that. So to be able to learn to live fearlessly is critical to knowing how to die fearlessly. And I think that just has to do with being able to let go and to embrace all as the path. And I think that's important, to not only knowing how to die well, but how to live well. It all contributes. Dying well and living well are kind of linked together, and two sides of the same coin.
And, in so many cultures, other than many of the Western cultures, the belief is that death is but a beginning, that it's a stepping off point. Right. And many, especially in the indigenous cultures and some of the Eastern philosophical beliefs systems, talk about that. What do we know about life after death, or what have you come across and or experienced in an NDE or something to that effect?
Well, as I say in my book, I don't know that any of us know a whole lot about life after death. We have the good fortune in an age of modern medicine to be able to bring people back from the brink of death. People have had near-death experiences where they have exited their physical bodies and then been able to return. And they tell of these different experiences. I think that what life after death is for anyone is maybe what they are expecting it to be. Whether you expect it to be heaven, whether you expect to meet Jesus, whether you expect to meet the Buddha or any type of another being, a higher power. I think that really plays a big part in how we experience our life after death. So it's nothing you can pin down, because it's one of those things where you kind of have to die in order to know what death is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's another experience. It's a mental thing. It's a mind thing. And I think you have to experience it to know it. And I think that's limiting. It's rather limiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk so much about, actually one of my biggest qualms about death, and especially for those of us who believe in reincarnation, is, I want to be able to remember this life. I want to be able to remember what I've learned, so I don't have to do it again if and when I come back, that type of philosophy. But what is consciousness, and what's the difference between mind and the brain? Because even I have a difficult time, what am I taking with me? So can you share a little bit about that, since you talk about that in your new book?
Right. Well, consciousness, I think, is awareness. It's an awareness of the mind. And when people talk about consciousness, often they confuse mind and brain. And the way I explain it when I teach about consciousness is that the brain is the hardware and mind is the software. So you can kind of open up someone's brain. Einstein's son gave his brain to I believe, to Princeton, and they were going to check his brain to see why he was so much more intelligent than the average person. And what they found out when they began examining his brain was it didn't look any different than anybody else's brain. Kind of like, my computer looks like your computer probably, and we all have computers, and they sort of all have this hardware system in them. And yet, from a mind point of view, you might look at a painting and say, wow, that's the most beautiful painting I've ever seen. I might look at the same painting and go, I really don't like that painting. It looks awful. I don't like the colors, so it's a perception thing. So that's the software side of it, is how we perceive things and how we each create our own world, really, because we all have different perceptions. We see things differently. And so consciousness exists throughout time and space. Consciousness never ends. Consciousness is. We are conscious beings at all levels of consciousness, whether that's waking consciousness, sleeping consciousness, dreaming, and even dying consciousness. The Dalai Lama has a really good book on that, Sleeping, Dreaming, Dying, about consciousness, from his Mind and Life Consciousness seminars from a few years ago.
Very interesting. I'm going to have to look those up, actually. I had a book many years ago when I was studying this very topic called from Sogyal Rinpoche, The Book of Living and Dying, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And he added the living aspect to it, which it talks a little bit about that and how we perceive death and whatnot, and how fear actually plays, quite a bit of role in the way that we react to these concepts. And you actually, in your book, you have a story from the Harry Potter series, which I'm sure my viewers will love hearing about, that's supposed to be helpful in helping us to understand the things that we fear. Could you share a little bit about that with us?
Well, most of the things that we fear are created, as is all our experience of the material world is created in the mind. And I think that the ridiculous experiment in Harry Potter was very illustrative of that, in that the teacher told them to think about the thing that they feared the most. As they would conjure up this thing that they would fear, whatever it was, it became a reality. And to get rid of it, he would just tell them, wave your wand and say, ridiculous. It's ridiculous to fear this. It's of your own mind. It's of your own making. And so I think that's important to remember, that most of the things we fear have been created in our own minds, as everything we experience is. And so we talk about the things we fear, but are they real? Is that part of our reality? It's part of our reality if we allow them to exist. If we create them and allow them to persist in our minds, then it's real. But there's a way to get rid of it. And, I thought ridiculous was a pretty good way to zap it out.
Yes, I'll have to use it as a mantra now. When I found out about your book, and which, by the way, everyone will be coming out in a few weeks. If you're watching this live, if you're watching the archive, check them out because it'll probably already be out. But just the title alone, The Illusion of Life and Death, really struck a chord for me because in my, my research and my practices, my spiritual practices, I was trained, and I try to do my best to meditate and contemplate on the idea that the way I perceive the world is an illusion, because someone else might see it a little bit differently than I do. And like you said, it's sometimes our fears as well as our concepts of what is real and what isn't real. We become a little bit reactionary to it sometimes. And the same thing goes with death, that for me, I've always felt that death is just the transitory process to another level and whatnot. You said how, depending on our background and what our beliefs of death are, might play a role in the way that death occurs. Do you find that there are many different death mythologies out there?
Well, I've been exposed to a few, in my lifetime, because I was raised a mainstream Christian and then studied other philosophies and then eventually into Hinduism and then Buddhism. So there are various death philosophies, and there's just individual philosophies. I know people who do not believe in an afterlife.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I knew a woman one time who was, I visited her in a nursing home, and she was very close to death. And she would always insist to me that she did not believe in life after death. She did not believe that there was anything but this life and this life alone, but that she had been having the experiences of people visiting her in her room every night. And there were so many of them, and she just wished they would quit visiting her at night because they were disturbing her. And so, and a few days later, she died. But so I think we can have experiences that are certainly outside of our realm of what we believe. But I think that what we believe is perhaps important in some respects, and yet I think we should always be open to a different experience if that comes along, because there's many things we have to learn.
Yes, there is. And speaking of learning, since I know you have to go in a few moments, can you perhaps give us some pointers to our viewers and perhaps those who will be reading your book in the future of what can we do to perhaps embrace this concept that life and death are an illusion, to help us, what's the word I'm looking for here, to help alleviate our fear of death?
Well, I think one of the most important things to alleviate the fear of death is just to realize that we are not our bodies. Our bodies are not permanent. Nothing in the material world that we call reality is permanent. And I think being able to release our idea that everything is permanent, to be able to embrace change, to remember that as life and death are two sides of the same coin, we embrace our life, we can also embrace our death. And I think that's the most important thing. And also to remember what my significant other, Brent, just before he died, told me, that dying is easy. I thought it would be harder than this, he said, but it's so easy. So perhaps we're making too much out of this process of death and dying.
The transition of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my sayings is it's always the ones that are left behind who suffer. The one who's transitioned, well, they're at peace and moving on to another, probably a more peaceful existence.
That's true.
Unless they decide to come back again, but reincarnate.
There you go. That's always a possibility.
Right. Well, wonderful. I want to thank you so much, Claire, for sharing your time with us. And I'm sure you've given us a lot of food for thought that we can contemplate. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you very much.
And that was Clare Goldsberry. So now we're at the point of our show where we are going to be doing our intention and spell. I chose, of course, to stick with the theme of today's show. And what the goal of today's intention is going to be, if you're going to follow along, the mantra, you know how I ask you to come up with a few words that you can repeat in your mind while we're doing this intention meditation. Today, I'm suggesting we do I am an eternal being, and I am at peace knowing I am infinite energy. So, if you would like to join me in this intention spell meditation to help us embrace the idea that we are infinite beings and that the death transition is a part of a long, infinite cycle, and we are eternal beings, why don't you go ahead and close your eyes? Let's take a deep breath in through our nose, filling our belly. And exhale. And again, taking a deep breath in through your nose. Pause. And exhale. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to feel your body surge with the mystic power of the gods themselves. Feel your body with this amazing, infinite, mystic power. Now see yourself fearless of death. Feel yourself knowing that you are an eternal being. You are fearless of the transition to another plane of existence. Allow yourself to see and sense this, and repeating the words in your mind. I am an eternal being and am at peace, knowing I am infinite energy. I am an eternal being and am at peace, knowing I am infinite energy. I am an eternal being and I am at peace, knowing I am infinite energy. Sense it, feel it, and know it. And as we do will it, so mote it be. Blessed be. So let me share with you the Claire's book cover. This is her book that will be out soon. I don't know if you can see it with the green screen. Hey, come on, you can do it. No, guess not. I try. I'm not really good with these green screen things, but it is called The Illusion of Life and Death, Mind, Consciousness, and Eternal Being. Her book will be out in a few weeks, and you can learn more about her at claregoldsberry.com. That's ClareGoldsberry.com. And let me take a few moments. I want to say hello to some of you on the chat while I have a chance. And there we go. Hello. Well, hello to Edward on YouTube. Thanks for being here. And Sugar Venom Doll, thanks again. Good seeing you on YouTube. Hello, Brenda on Facebook. I hope you're enjoying that. And it looks like you like the idea of the book. And to Daryl Sanders on YouTube, hello. Thank you so much for being here. So, as usual, oh, there's Marilyn's Planet on YouTube. Hello from Connecticut. Well, actually, hello from Roanoke. Hello to Connecticut. So, of course, I will be back next Tuesday at a regular time, regular space, regular places, wherever you find me, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and I don't know how to say the name of that Russian one. I'm on a Russian one also. Barcourt, I don't know how to say it. But anyway, yes, please always, as always, please consider becoming a monthly supporter. If you don't want to become a monthly supporter, you can always just click the link and just tip me. I thank all of your support, whether it's by sharing, watching, and being a part of my community. The intention of the Grove is to build community. I hope that you all know that we are trying to build a community over on my website. You can go to bernardalvarez.com/Grove, become a member, get to know other people that watch our weekly broadcasts and are a part of this, what do I call the consciousness agenda, for lack of a better term. Anyway, so let's take a moment now and do our closing words and our closing prayers so we can remain grounded throughout the rest of the week. Be gone from me, worry and woe. I have the strength to break free and the wisdom to know. As I breathe in this sacred day, my calm will grow. I call upon my inner guides to help me take it slow. My serenity and tranquility will overflow with harm to none and blessings to all. So mote it be, blessed be. Thank you, everyone. I love you so much. Thank you for being a part of my world, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I love you very much. Have a wonderful week ahead. Bye bye.